Sam, we are. Sam, oh, you miss Sam, we are. Sam, we are. Sam, we are.
This is Sam Cap and Sam Dub with Sam We Are.
Yes, here we are, another week. And this week is very special. We have a really, really cool guest with us today. You could definitely call him a celebrity.
Yeah, definitely a celebrity.
Definitely a celebrity. And his name is Alloyious McIlwaine. Did I get that right?
You did.
Thank
Absolutely.
God. I was stressing over that so hard.
Yes.
That's funny.
So, there's so many things we could talk about with you, so many avenues we could walk down. Just to give a little bit of a backstory about Alloyious. I personally met Alloyious at an art show. I don't remember how long ago I met you, but I've
Had to be at least like 3 or 4 years, I'd say.
definitely. So you were doing a live painting.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which one I saw you at
I
first.
think, well, yeah, I can't remember what the first one was because there have been so many that, me and Weston were painting at. So I can't remember what the first one was. But the one that's most memorable was the one that we did like kind of in Dilworth Plaza at City
Yes!
Hall for Bud Light, I think it was.
Yes.
Oh.
Speaking of
Yeah.
Dilworth
You
Plaza.
know what it was? It was right. It was right before the DNC.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's so funny that you mentioned that because I actually brought that up with Sam yesterday at work. The picture that I sent you.
Yes.
Yes. So,
That was there.
yes, during that actual moment. So, Alloyious is an artist, first and foremost. I think that's like your most identifiable
Yeah,
trait.
just
Would you
All
agree?
around artist, yeah.
Yeah, okay. An artist in so many ways. But I first met Alloyious when he was doing some live painting at Dilworth Park, which if you're not a Philadelphian, you probably have no idea what that means. But basically that means there's a little park right in front of City Hall, the oldest and biggest and most gorgeous city hall in the country. But those
Yes,
are all,
Philly pride.
those
Okay,
are all true
girl.
facts. All true facts. But there was like a little Bud Light party going on.
Mhm.
And it was for the DNC.
Yep.
So Alloyious was painting there, and my husband was actually painting with him.
That's Wes.
And yes, and that's Wes. And there was a couple other people there. There was a couple other vendors doing stuff there, but I don't know if you remember Alloyious. Because you were like kind of at the side of City Hall, but in the front of City Hall, do you remember the Westboro Baptist Church came?
I vaguely remember that. I feel like I was so into what I was doing that I wasn't even like paying attention. I was
Yeah,
like, completely in
Because
the zone.
I don't think you or Weston saw it, but I saw it. So I went over to the Westboro Baptist Church. And if people that are listening don't know what that means, they are a really angry mob of people that hate everyone. And that's the best way to sum them up.
Yeah.
They hate you no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just know that they hate you.
Especially if you're gay, right? I think they hate
Especially if you're
gays
gay.
most,
Oh,
right?
that's awful.
I think
believe.
that's their most hated.
They hate everyone. You're right.
They do.
Definitely
They-
Jews are up there. We're
Yeah.
all up there.
Yes.
Wait, are
But
these the guys that just stand outside and basically yell at everyone?
Yes,
Okay.
with the signs, the really
Yeah, yeah,
abrasive
yeah.
signs
Yeah.
that are
Mhm.
basically like, if you're gay, then die.
Yeah.
Is
yeah.
basically what their signs say. So I saw this group of people that was there and they were, causing a scene, yelling slurs, all racist, sexist, anything you can think of.
Wow, it's awful.
Yeah. And so I stood in front of them and I'm a very confrontational person sometimes. I think anyone that knows me pretty well knows that about me. It's something I'm
Yes.
working on. I'm working on it. I swear. So I went over and I started like, obviously yelling at these people and we were going at it a little bit. And this random stranger
Mm-hmm.
who was a female came up to me and she was like, do you want to make out in front of all these people? And I
That's
was
awesome.
like, you know what? I do.
Mhm.
So we made out in front of the Westboro Baptist Church and they told me I was going to hell and I told them I was excited. When does the bus leave? I'm ready. Hell sounds fun. All my friends are going to be there. But
right?
yeah, they were making a scene. They were screaming, I'm making out with a stranger. And then that was kind of it. And I walked away.
That is a crazy story. And you know what's funny? If I would have seen that, I probably would have been getting into it with them too. So it's like,
Yeah, well, I was in the news the next day.
mhm.
I had the picture sent to me by actually my brother-in-law was like, is this you? I was like,
yep.
it is me. And That's all I would like to say about that. But meanwhile, I remember going back over to you guys after it happened. And I was like, hey, Wes, I just made out with some girl. And he was like, okay.
That sounds like him.
Which is so Wes.
Yeah.
That's Wes.
That sounds like him.
The chillest person on earth. But yeah, so that's how I met Alloyious. And then there was a couple more art shows after that. And I always got excited when you were there because I got to watch you work in action, which is really cool. Hopefully we'll be doing that again sometime soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I had a lot of really cool painting things coming up, and then everything happened. So
isn't that the truth?
Yeah, looking forward to getting back to it. The thing I was upset at the most was we had Tiny Room for Elephants, the big festival, which is it's like a collective of I'd say like 40 artists, and we were doing like a whole big mural showcase, and we were expecting like 40,000 people. We were taking over the whole pier from Cherry Street to Ray Street and Spruce Street, Harbor Park. We were taking over the entire thing for the festival, and it just
it's so sad.
Yeah, I was so sad.
It's heartbreaking. You know, it's funny. Okay, before we did this podcast, Alloyious, I looked you up on Facebook. I was like, let me see who this person is.
Right.
You and I have 17 mutual friends.
Really?
Isn't that shocking?
Not
Okay,
you know,
I mean, not really, right? Because
Philly's one of those places where, like, it's the smallest big city in the world. Like, everyone, like, if you're doing anything, you know everyone else that's doing anything.
That's 100% true. That's the best way to say it, is that if you're doing anything in Philly, you know everyone else doing things. That's right. And it's funny because I was like, you and I have all these mutual friends who are artists, musicians, comedians, and then just like bartenders, like just like all the Philly, all these celebrities, as you may, all over. But it was just really funny. And I think one of my friends, I'm going to say his name wrong too, I'm sure. Sepper. That's his name.
Sepper.
Sepper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my buddy.
Yeah.
So he's in Tiny Room for Elephants too.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
So he's one of our mutual friends. I knew him from, I used to manage Munchies on South Street for 5 years. And so when you manage a big head shop on South Street, you know all of the people. You wind up like, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, you managed a head shop. No, it's like one of those things, you just meet everyone who's everyone in the city.
And he's
know?
always painting on South Street too. That's like his stomping ground. So
exactly. So he'd come in, he'd get his blunts. I'd be like, yo, and he'd like ride his bike away. And like every day I saw him.
That sounds like him.
Yeah. So now I'm calling him out. I'm sorry. I don't know if he wants to publicize that he got blunts. They were just for tobacco use only. Obviously. Not trying to blow up his spot or anything. But yeah, he's such a sweetheart.
No, he's one of the sweetest human beings you'll ever meet.
Yeah, he really is. And he's so talented. So talented. But I know he was part of Tiny Room for Elephants.
Yeah, I love Sepper. We're supposed to be doing a bunch of collaborations actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look out for those.
Oh yeah, I absolutely will. I'm gonna friend you on Facebook now that we've actually met. I didn't want to stalk you too much and pre-friend you before we
I'm
were
super
IRL
friendly. I would have
friends,
just added you either way.
Yeah. I feel like as a comedian, I get so many random friend requests from people that I'm like, no, like if I don't know you, I'm not. Because it's not like fans. It's like other people who want to be comedians who are like, oh, I see you're doing all these. And they have like 3 mutual friends. I'm like, you don't fucking know anyone. You don't know me. You don't do things. Don't creep on my, don't creep on my life. I don't want you to know my mom's name. Like, you don't need to know where I grew up and shit. Like,
no, but normally if I see that I have a certain amount of mutual friends with someone, I automatically add them. So I'm like, I'm going to meet you anyway. So might as well.
Totally.
That's true.
Might as well be friends early.
That's true.
But like right now, I have to like be careful about who I'm adding because like I'm starting to reach that 5,000 friend mark.
Yep.
And like, so I'm like, I usually just like click, add.
Yep. That's tricky because then at some point you will have to be like, I have to get rid of these people who I don't know.
Well,
so that I can actually
that hasn't
add
been that hard recently.
Do you have a page that you like that we could like that's like your art page on Facebook? Okay.
I do.
So that's always a way to get around that too, is to send all those strangers there, right?
Well, yeah. Also, just because of the current climate, like there's certain people that I was just like, and I'm one of those people that it's very like it takes a lot for me to do that. Like I'll mute you for like a month or whatever, and I'll do it a couple times. And if I keep on saying the same thing, I'm like, all right, I can't have this in my life. So it takes a while, but
yeah. Tell me, Sam, what's up?
So going back to your artistry and talking about your talent. So you are an international artist. You have over 200 murals worldwide.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, probably like 217, 218, something like that.
That's so crazy. And not even just in Philadelphia, although, when I'm driving through the city, I can definitely pick out your artwork from a mile away.
I have like 137 here, but like
wow, I did not know you had that many. Oh my gosh. Well, you should set up like
I'm building a map for
a little tour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a map
really
that
cool.
I'm putting together for it.
Oh, that would be so dope.
So not even Philadelphia. That's just like the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you've gone to London, you've gone to Paris, Tokyo. I feel like this is a rap song where they're like London, Paris, Tokyo. Like that's you.
That actually is a song by Lupe Fiasco, Paris, Tokyo.
Yes.
That's your life.
Yes.
He wrote that about you, actually.
That's exactly the song I was thinking of. But not only have you traveled all over, you've worked with some pretty big brand names such as Budweiser, Marriott, Dos Equis, Bloomingdale's. I mean, that's quite impressive.
Yeah, Champion, Tom Shoes. There's a bunch of ones I'm probably forgetting too, but yeah, that's good. I just did the cover for Bella Magazine's fashion issue and has Tyson Beckford on the front cover and my stuff's on the back. I'm still waiting for it to come out, but it should drop any minute now.
That's awesome. I want you
really
to paint me like
that.
one of your French girls wearing this.
I got you covered.
He's like, I already have 5 ready to go. I've already been working on them.
Yeah, but so what's on your calendar these days that is like mural related? Anything coming up?
Well, there is an important mural that I'm doing on Monday. I'm actually doing a mural for Biden's campaign. They contacted me a couple weeks ago. Cool. So I basically did like I used some of the positive wording from the campaign, but I mostly wanted to make like an overall just like symbolic message to just get people out to vote. So it's not really centered around Biden as much, but just like an overall message, an empowering message to get people out for the vote. Because it's just so important, especially with this probably being the most important election in modern history. So
hell yeah,
yeah.
So.
I have anxiety thinking about it already. Like, I don't know if I think I'm going to get into like a drunken / high stupor that night. So I can just like pass out and then be slowly awakened in the morning by like cooing doves. And then they have like a rolled up message in their beak that tells me who it was because I'm that scared.
Yeah.
I literally wake up every morning now and I'm just like damage report cut on TV to see like that's literally the, I don't think we've had a week, in the 4 years since we've had this current president where there hasn't been some kind of scandal or another. It's just, it's draining. It's overwhelming. I'm tired.
I feel that.
Yeah, it is. It's exhausting, right? I don't know. I feel like I've been exhausted for like 20 years since 2001 during 9/11. That was like and I was little. I was little as fuck. I was like 10 years old. And I was like, this is bad. This is all bad. And I feel like it was really eye-opening as a little kid.
Right.
And I feel like I have been pissed ever since then, Like I was a little kid and I went to school downtown at Masterman. So I was also you're from Philly, right?
Yeah, I went to Friend Select. So
hey,
yeah.
what's up? And so so I was at Masterman for middle school and I'm from the Northeast Philly. So where are you from originally? Like what
Well, I
area?
grew up in North. Well, not that far away from here actually.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, around Broad Erie.
Okay. I'm familiar. So I'm from like the Northeast, like Ronhurst area. And so I would travel like all the way downtown and, do my little Masterman thing. But like, 9/11 hit and it was like, I was like downtown and like everything, the world was like shutting down. I was like little, there was no cell phones. You're just like, we were fucking stuck downtown. How were you in school at that time?
It was my first year in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and I just remember, I remember being little and then all my friends, like after that, they were like going to these protests with their parents. And I asked my parents if I could go to the protest downtown and they were like, hell no. They were like, you better get your, and I was like, but their parents will be there. Like, you do not go to that protest. They were like, that is not how, they were they were for the cause. They just were like,
they were afraid.
I was 10 years old. They were like, don't go to the fucking protest. But, they were like, you can't, we're not letting you, like the kids were taking off school. Their parents were allowing them. It was like a whole thing. But my parents were like, hell no. But I think I've been pissed since then, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, even going a little bit further, James Baldwin has this quote where he basically said, to be a woke black man in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And he said this back in the 60s. And I feel like it's hard not always being angry because I feel like I always have to constantly explain aspects of discrimination to people because they just like either don't understand or don't want to understand. And it's draining.
Yeah.
It's draining. I mean, I feel like that's one of the reasons why we need mandatory just cultural diversity classes like starting from a young age. So by the time people get to be older, there's so many people that I met that were interacting with people from other races for the first time when they were in college, which is absurd.
I was one of those. Yeah. And I mean,
I sighed like it was your fault.
I
was
know.
like,
No, no,
Well,
and
it's not your fault. No, it's not. Like I was like, like it's not your
I'm
fault.
also from a very, very small town, and
In PA?
in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania. I'm actually from Myerstown, and the town is named after Isaac Meyer, who is famous for nothing other than he was a slave owner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my town is named after. We preserved his house.
Ugh.
He has like the slave quarters up top, I think they were. And like my town preserves this and is like proud of this. They're like, yes.
In the north, in PA,
yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah. So that's where I'm from. But I didn't really interact with anyone that wasn't white growing up all the way through high school. I think there were 2 twins actually
Mm-hmm.
who were black that went to my high school. And that's about the extent of the interaction that I had
Right.
with anyone who was black. And I think there were like a couple other black kids that went to my school. But for the most part, I mean, they're just weren't in my area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that I struggle with too, because everyone I know
Mm-hmm.
is completely racist.
Mm-hmm.
And
not me.
no, not you, but most, and I shouldn't say everyone I know. That's a very, very broad
Well, now all
term.
your new friends. We have, you
Yeah.
have your.
I've lived in Philly
yeah.
for 7 years, so it's different now.
I mean,
But
people
people that you grew
people
up
from
with.
my
Yeah.
hometown.
Oh, trust me, I have a mural coming up, and we're supposed to do it. And I can't remember the name of the town. It's like Missoppin or something like that. And they did their first protest regarding everything that was going on, and just the outpour of racism has been like completely ridiculous. Like I was just watching a live feed from it, and was just like, wow, just shocked.
Yeah. It's scary. I mean, my boyfriend's also a comedian, and he just got into a festival that he's been hoping to get into in Wisconsin. It's in a month. We're both going.
Right.
He's black.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't realize this, but that's why I'm telling you that, and to anyone listening. But and I'm like, at first I wasn't going to go with him. Like the plan was for him to just go alone. And then like, I don't know, we both kind of were just like, I'm just gonna go with you, and we're just
Mhm.
gonna make this trip together. And like, it's in October. That's where I'm gonna be next month in October. And like, yeah, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about. I've never wanted to. I'm from Philly. I've lived in Philly my whole
Right.
life. You know, I've never wanted to go to the South. I've never wanted to go to the Midwest. Like, my boyfriend's like, yeah, I want to see how my comedy like does in the
Mhm.
Midwest. And I'm like, you do? I'm like, no, I know, like, I get it, but I don't want to see how my comedy bombs in the Midwest. I don't want to see how they're like, this bitch up here talking about pussies. Like, we don't allow women to speak like this. This is just what I imagined. I don't know. But so, and I'm just making fun of people in different places now. But I'm sorry. It's not their fault they were from there. But yeah, I mean, it's hard.
Same. Not my fault. I'm from where I'm from.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I've never been to the Midwest or the South. I've been other places. I've been to the West Coast, the best coast. But yeah, and it's scary. I think that's all I have to say. I'm just scared. I'm too anxious to go further.
Scary.
But yeah.
And you know what else is interesting? Like, there's so many people that are learning about some of these like things that have happened in history from shows like Watchmen. Like that's when there were so many people posting online about the what happened on Black Wall Street in Tulsa, and they were posting about it like, wait, this happened in real life, and I'm like, it's so like most people don't even know about like what happened in Seneca Park, Seneca Village, which is now Central Park. Like that was a thriving Black community before. It was basically taken away. Like you had so many areas like that were, being affected. You had Black Wall Street, you had Seneca Village, and you had things happening like the Elaine massacre that people aren't taught about these things in school. Where I don't know if you're familiar with the Elaine massacre because a lot of people don't know about this. But
the others, I was with you. I was like, I know about this. I know about this. I'm cool. I'm woke. And then I was like, I don't know about. So I was like, I'll nod until he asked me. The Elaine
massacre was basically something that happened. I think it was around 1919, and there were a lot of people that were coming back from the war, and they were sharecroppers. And basically, it was made into like a new form of slavery because the landowners were basically saying, "Oh, well, you picked this much of the crops, but you use $600 worth of our machines, and you can't leave until you pay off of these things." And so this group of people in Arkansas, they got some lawyers, and they took up arms because people were coming to attack them. Basically, what happened was. a group of people came and like tried to attack them while they were in church, shot up the church. Some of the black farmers shot back, killed one of the white guys. 500 troops were sent in to deal with this black uprising. They killed 219 black men and women. Took another 12 to trial who were going to be executed. But finally, like the court decided that it was unconstitutional what was happening. But like people don't learn about these things in school, and it's just it's scary, and that feeds into some of these mindsets that people have. You know what I mean? Like they're unaware of certain things and certain stigmas and institutional racism. So, one of the things I've been trying to do with my art is to kind of try to educate and combat that type of thing. And it's hard. It's a lot of work.
Oh, right. I bet it's really exhausting. And even your great grandparents were two of the original plaintiffs in the Brown versus Board of Education case.
Yes, they were.
Could you talk about that a little bit? That's so interesting.
Basically, the situation was where my great grandparents and some other parents, they were basically their kids were in schools, like they had this whole separate but equal thing. So saying that, the schools will be, we'll keep everything separate. We'll keep the white kids separate. We'll keep the black kids separate. But, everything's going to be equal as far as the schooling and the school system and everything and the facilities and, everything that they have there. But obviously, like, it wasn't. They had them in leaky schools, everything was faulty. Like the curriculum was like 3 decades behind what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so, my great grandparents and some other parents literally fought to have, this taken to the Supreme Court. And basically the Supreme Court, and Thurgood Marshall was their lawyer, basically said, this is having these schools segregated. It's unconstitutional. These schools aren't equal. This is not right. And finally, schools were desegregated. So and I get to meet Thurgood Marshall when I was like 8 or 9 years old.
That's so cool.
So yeah, it's crazy.
That's
meeting
wild.
like a legend like that,
I feel like you just have like history running through your
you really do.
your veins,
Yeah.
That's always have to make sure to do everyone proud,
Yeah. And I was really drawn to like some of the Facebook messages that you were posting recently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason I felt like I could get a little more deep with you.
Right.
Just because I knew you were open to it. I know you had written something that was long and beautiful. And I actually said, hey, like, do you mind if I paste this?
Yeah, for sure.
So I reposted it just because it was so beautifully worded. And I think that, because this is something that is going to be an ongoing battle, I think when you go about it, in trying to educate people, because that's what some people need. Some people need to literally sit at a desk and learn, including a lot of people I know and am related to. But I was just really, I felt emotional from your words, and I really appreciated you writing it the way that you did, because for me, something that I've said before that I struggle with is sometimes I get really confrontational, and I get really confrontational fast. And then I don't get my point across because I came off in the wrong way, which is, like I said, something I'm working on. But my instinct is always like, I go right for the jugular and I'm like, shit, why did I do that? And then I lost them.
Yeah. And that's something that I've had to learn over time, that you can't, like, sometimes when you're trying to provide a point and more information, you kind of have to separate yourself and try to figure out what the best message is going to be to reach those people.
Right.
Like I was even talking to some people who didn't understand, like, every time people started talking about white privilege. And I was like, listen, unless you're a handicapped minority trans woman in America, you probably have some form of privilege. And I was like, I'll break it down to you. I was like, being a black man in America, I have certain things that I have to deal with, but there's a couple things that I don't have to deal with. I don't have to worry about whether I can hold the hand of the person that I love walking down the street without being harassed. I don't, and even regarding the disabled, I don't have to worry about whether every building that I walk into has some kind of ramp so that I can go in there.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to break the idea of what privilege is down to people. It's not something that's just because you're born a certain way, it's not a problem. When you have privilege, I feel like the job is to recognize that it's there. And then when you see things that are happening that are wrong, just be an ally for the people that are struggling. It's no knock against you. You can't help how you were born. But
Right.
for example, this is an example that I gave just to give people an idea. And this is a small example of what privilege is. In 2019, there was a law passed in California that allowed Black women to wear their hair naturally in the workplace without being discriminated against.
I work in HR, so I know that one, and it's insane.
Like, and that's I had to break that down to people. I was like, do you have to worry about whether the way your hair naturally grows is seen as professional or not?
Yes.
In your workplace, and you know, they were like, wow, I never really even thought about it like that. And I'm like, it's oftentimes. Because I feel like when people first start talking about that topic, they automatically go to the wealth aspect and whether or not you have issues and struggles in your life. Everyone has struggles.
Right.
Everyone. That's not the point. The point is like, if we're talking about privilege, it's in this particular case, is your skin color making your life harder or not?
Right.
And if it's not, then that's what we're talking about here. There's so many things like. I remember just growing up and being a kid, and my mom's like, basically, like I had to be even careful with what I was wearing outside.
Right.
Like I couldn't just wear a hoodie even though they're comfortable and just have it on because, if I wear a hoodie, I'm seen as being, a threat because I fit into some kind of stereotypical hyper aggressive caricature of like a thug or something just because I'm wearing a hoodie.
Right.
And so that's basically one of those things where like people didn't understand, but I had to like calm myself and break it down into things like that. Like it's not always about the financial aspect, even though there were some economists that were saying that things aren't going to be on equal ground for minorities for probably about another 206 years. But that's not even the
Just a
main,
couple years away, right?
Right. That's not even the main part of it. The main part, it's like the little microaggressions, the little things like when you're intelligent and you speak a certain way, it's seen as talking white. Like just that, like that's such a mind fuck.
It's
you know what I mean?
So
like
frustrating.
That's what I mean. If you just think about things like that, that's where the problems are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I found over time that I had to kind of just take a step back and break things down in a way that made sense to people so that they could relate to the situation. And that's the way to reach people the best, I think.
It's true. It's true. And I think about this a lot right now, especially as I see a lot of people who are new to the activist lifestyle, or a lot of people who I'm noticing are sort of discovering a lot of this information now, which is great to do it rather sooner rather than later. Great. But it's all new to them and they're just kind of taking it all in. And I have been doing activism in so many different forms throughout my life. And I think about these times and I think about, okay, we're obviously both vegan, and being vegan, you could be really aggressive, right? You could see someone eating something. I'm not
guilty.
Listen, I know I was about to say. Actually, let me take this back. Sam Dubb over here is really aggressive.
No, I'm not anymore. I'm
vegan.
working on it. Sam
She's
Dubb
learning.
has a good heart, people.
She does. But that's the thing is when you're newer to something, when you first discover something, you want everyone to know. You feel like you've discovered this magical secret, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, like I know this thing and I want you all to know. And if you don't know and you're not listening and you don't want to know, then you're an idiot because I know the secret that everyone doesn't know. I don't know. And so, I think about it with veganism, and I also I've worked in homelessness services for like almost 3 years now, and one of the things that I do is employment services. We hire folks who have experienced homelessness and help them get different jobs. And so one of the jobs that we run is like a candle making program. So I make candles that are made by folks who have experienced homelessness, and then like my job is like do product development for the candles, market them, sell them, all that stuff. And so my big joke is, okay, when I make my candle labels, I could put on my candles, if you don't buy this candle, you're murdering a homeless person every day. Every day, homeless people die, and you suck because you're not buying this candle. Is that going to sell any candles, y'all?
I bought like 8.
I mean, right. But that's because that's not my message.
That's funny.
But because we know I put on the candle something like, buy now to end homelessness, buy now to help end homelessness. That's it. That's the phraseology. And it's yes, people who are experiencing homelessness, especially in the city, there's a huge, thing going on with the housing crisis in Philadelphia right now.
Right.
But like, you could be yelling at people every day, like, you're not doing anything and you have socks on your feet and there are people without socks and fuck you for having socks. That's not going to help anyone. That's not going to make anyone care about folks who are experiencing homelessness who don't have socks. So it's really all about your approach and getting the other person on your side. It's like, it's easy to just say, oh, that person said a stupid thing, let's cancel them forever. Right. And they're never going to learn and they're never going to get better. You could approach them with, a certain a certain level of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to use the word kindness, but with like a just
No,
I
I think that's the right word.
No, that is the right word.
Yeah.
'Cause you have to realize that we're all humans and we're all prone to mistakes. So sometimes it just takes someone's eyes being open. Now you have certain people that it doesn't really matter what you say or do. They're just too stuck in what they're going to do. But you also have people that make honest mistakes just because they don't understand the weight of something.
Yeah.
And so in that case, it's better to educate the person as opposed to tearing them down, because if you tear them down, then they're going to feel some sort of way about it, as opposed to if you just bring some information to them that they weren't aware of, then they can say, oh, well, I realize why this is wrong at this point and why I shouldn't be doing this type of thing. And I feel like we've all had moments like that where we learned something was wrong and it was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize how bad this was until just now.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
And of course, I mean, I think about that. I wasn't born vegan. I wasn't born a perfect white person, obviously, right? I'm white. I've done and said stupid shit at some point in my life that I have to own up to, acknowledge, and become better, like to do better than that.
Right.
That was bad language. You know what I'm trying to say?
I
need
exactly
to
what you're saying.
look back on those and go, oh, what? That stupid thing I said in high school 15 years ago, that was wrong. I need to make sure that I teach my niece not to ever say stuff like that. Right. And like, obviously I know not to say stuff like that now at age almost 30, but it's exactly that. Like I wasn't born anti-racist as a white person, and so like it's doing that work and continuing to do that work and also understanding that not everyone's done that work yet. And yeah, I mean, sure, there's going to be certain people who, if they're violent, don't even bother talking to them because you're going to only put yourself at risk. But if people are family members or friends of yours and they say something that you're like, oh, maybe they don't understand about the housing crisis. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Here's what's happening, And I think that there is a way that you can educate people without driving them away from the cause or canceling them or telling them that they're wrong and stupid and,
Can we talk about that? Because I think that is a direction that I've been wanting to go.
And I'm not attacking you. I'm so sorry.
No, I know.
I wasn't adding.
I know you're never.
I wasn't adding
me.
you.
I know.
Yeah.
But,
I respect your style, especially with vegan. You do you. But
no, I mean, when we talk about these things, I feel like I always have an example, and it's sad, but it's the way it is.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to Sam a little bit about this, because it's nice to have an outside look on things, especially because your boyfriend's Black too.
Yeah.
So I always like to have opinions about what is the best way to go about this, because I personally have been dealing with a lot of family members and, distant relatives that have been posting things that in my mind are disgusting and unforgivable, to the point where I'm ready to just cut ties and just go our separate ways.
Yeah. There's certain people that just don't don't get it. Like I keep seeing this meme pop up where it's just like, if you don't do the crime, you don't do crimes, then you won't be harassed by the police, or you won't have interactions with the police. For minority communities, that's not true.
That's not true.
I can't even tell you how many times I've been approached or harassed by the police, and I'm about as squeaky clean as it gets. Like, I mean, the only thing I've ever really gotten in trouble for was for doing art stuff, and that wasn't even here. That was in Tokyo. So
we just saw some
some Philadelphia art happen.
Some kids were tagging the KFC at Broad and Gerard on our way here. Sam's like, "What are they doing?" And all these kids are filming, and I was like, "Oh, they're about to hit it. They're about to tag it."
You couldn't even read it though. That's the saddest part.
They did their little signature. They were like, "Chee chee chee."
Yeah, like people really don't get it though. Like I remember an instance when I was like 7 years old, and I was playing ball on the side of the street with my sister, and my mom is like in the yard, like not far away, but she's like cutting some stuff. So she's kind of letting us do our thing and play ball. There's a cop car comes by. I guess there was a car passing, and I guess a rock kicked up from the cops. From the other car and hit the cop's window. The cop gets out and puts a gun in my face and threatens me. He said, I could technically shoot your brains out for throwing a rock at a police. And I'm 7 years old. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I didn't throw anything. And I'm like scared to death. And my mom like literally sees what's going on and runs out and is like ready to fight the cop. And then my dad comes out and he's ready to fight the police. And then his partner kind of pulled him away and like got him in the car and they drove off. But like, that's not an abnormal thing to happen to young Black kids. And so I feel like that's one of those things that people don't understand. Like that, we get harassed. And there's this there was this one police officer that just posted this thing, and a lot of police officers have been coming out and doing things like this. We're saying that, listen, if we haven't met our quota, we're told where to go to meet some of these quotas. So they go into neighborhoods and are looking to meet a quota. So that causes certain interactions between people, and like people don't understand that this is what happens, and it happens frequently, so I no, go ahead.
No, go on, Alloyious. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think one of the problems is that people have to understand that this is a real thing that occurs. We're not making this up, The really sad thing is that every black person that I know has at least probably 3 to 5 examples of being harassed by the police. Every single person I know.
Yeah.
Every single one. So people have to understand that that's what it's like for us. And so when people say things like, if you don't do anything, you're not going to have altercations with the police, that's not true. I remember I got questioned by the police. I was literally in a full suit heading into work. And because I guess I fit some kind of description, I don't know what kind of description involved having somebody in a full suit committing a crime, but they came and questioned me as I'm walking into work. It's people don't understand that that's what actually happens.
Yeah.
So it's part of the education process,
Yeah. And it's like a conversation, sadly, that like black parents have to have with their children when they're really little.
That's another privilege thing that I bring up to people. Like the difference is like when black parents have a conversation with their kids about the police, it's like, listen, if there's some kind of problem and the police are involved, there's a 50-50 chance that this might go bad for you.
Yes.
And that's a conversation that black parents, like my mom is still to this day scared to death anytime I leave the house. To this day. I'm an actual adult.
Yeah.
She's still to this day, every time I leave the house, she's like, you're a black man in America. You have to be so careful. You have to be aware of this. And she'll give me like 15 things to look out for just leaving the house if I tell her I'm going anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Yeah.
So.
It is. And it's a privilege that people who are not black, who are not of color, don't realize. And hopefully are, if they haven't realized it yet, starting to finally realize. Because it's scary. And you're right. I'm just stressing now about my trip with my boyfriend, and I'm trying not to, but we're going to be fine. Everything's going to go great.
Do you want me to go with you? Because I'll drop a motherfucker.
Yes.
Like I have 4 weapons on me at all times.
It'll be super fun. We are not bringing any weapons.
I'm bringing weapons, but
maybe I'll bring a weapon. No, I'm just kidding. We are not bringing any weapons. I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm like, I guess we're not going to bring any cannabis across state lines.
Fuck that. I'll do it.
Come with us. Come join us.
I got nothing going on.
It's going to be a comedy festival. It'll be super fun. It'll be good.
It will be. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like these conversations, people need to hear them if they're not aware of it. Like you said,
really
if people are for the first time in college at age 18 or whatever, meeting people of color and black people. I remember going to college and someone saying that I was the first Jewish person they met.
How crazy is that?
It blew my mind. I mean, I know there's not like a ton of Jewish people in Philadelphia. They're around the suburbs a lot,
There's enough.
There's enough. Yeah. Like there's a lot of, but we're here and there's like a big presence of us. And like, I grew up in my little tiny couple of like blocks that I grew up in. There was like these, Orthodox, like Jewish synagogues.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of Orthodox Jewish people we're not Orthodox, but like Orthodox Jewish people who lived on my block just because, on Fridays and Saturdays, they can't drive. So they need to live close to the synagogue so they can walk and stuff. And so just like in that few blocks, there were just like all Jewish people for a while. It was super weird. And I remember being shocked. I mean, they said something like, oh, that person tried to Jew you out of your money. And then I just looked at it. How
terrible is that?
Right. And I looked at this kid and I was like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And then he must have realized I was Jewish in that moment. And he was like, oh, I didn't, he starts to backpedal, do that. I was like, no, just tell me what you mean. I never heard anyone say that. I actually never heard anyone say that before. I knew what he meant, but I had never heard someone say, oh, you tried to Jew me. I'm like, oh, I guess that's a slur against us. I didn't.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing with gypsies and saying that people got gypped out of a certain thing. It's like such a terrible thing.
Yeah. We just talked about it in the car.
Yeah.
I said, oh yeah. I said, you can't say, and I wasn't saying it to her. I was saying it, can't say gypped anymore. So I was like, you have to say get ripped off. That's but
I guess it's no shocker they say both of those things where I'm from.
Of course. And it's one of those things though, when you hear something like that, like I just realized, I learned that the term Eskimo is also a slur. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. These
I
are
did not know that either.
all
A
new-
lot of people don't know that, like, even the word Oriental, if it's not used to talk about like an actual rug, like it's usually
Yes.
people
Yeah.
find offense to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's like
You
an
know?
older, right? Like,
Mhm.
and these terms, they get phased out and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
I guess my thing is like, how can you be afraid of language changing? Like,
right.
you know,
You just have to realize after a while that certain things just aren't acceptable
Yeah.
anymore.
yeah,
It's just not, and it should never have been. But like,
Yeah.
especially at this point where people are realizing and finding out the history behind certain things. You know, it's so funny just talking about some of the things you were just speaking about there. I remember, so I went to Friend Select, which is a private Quaker school, and I remember from a young age they taught us about different culture. Like we got to go and learn about Jewish culture, and we got to learn about we got to visit Chinatown and talk to people there, and they really took us out to meet people. And so I remember growing up and just like finding out all this like hate towards Jewish people. And I just like, it was so hard for me to even grasp the concept of it. And it was so heartbreaking,
Yeah.
going from situations where, culture and like the beauty of culture is encouraged to, learning about how ugly things really are,
Yeah.
it's just really interesting. But I feel like if everyone had that same education growing up,
yeah.
it's different.
Yeah,
you
I didn't
know?
learn that.
But it is. And I mean, I think parents are hopefully trying to teach their
Mhm.
children, at least.
I don't think they are.
I feel like I live in a bubble. I live in a Philly modern
yeah.
liberal bubble.
Mhm.
And I don't like, I remember being shocked 4 years ago I was shocked because I didn't know anyone who was voting that way. And so I was shocked. I was like, these things I like never thought of, and I get it. I'm like naive in the opposite way than most people. Most white people. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Most white people are naive, whereas like they never grew up around people of like color or black people. I'm like the opposite. I didn't grow up around like white Christian
Mhm.
conservatives, and so
That's
that's what's. I'm like
Everyone I
don't-
know.
Yeah, that's the world I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my dad's a preacher as well.
Oh,
So that's an interesting fact.
I'm sorry. Is that Catholic or Christian or Protestant?
No,
or
it's not Catholic.
Do you know what you are? What were you raised?
I'm not 100%.
Or what
I think it is, I want to say Lutheran,
Mm.
okay.
which I think is not like the super crazy ones that are like
Okay.
in your face screaming.
I like that you don't know. You're
I'm
like,
not
yeah, I don't-
100%. I haven't stepped in church since I'm 16.
Was he a preacher when you were? Is a preacher the same thing?
I don't know. I'm not
I'm
sure.
making my questions to myself. I'm sorry.
No,
This
it's
is
okay.
not Christian School 101, Sam.
Are
or
you
Kat.
going to ask if it's the same thing as like a minister?
I guess so. Yeah, or like a priest. Is it all the same thing?
Priest is Catholic.
Got
I
it.
know that.
Got it.
And I think a minister and a pastor and a preacher are like one and the same.
Okay.
Yeah, they pretty much are.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at you like I'm just like I don't know. I'm looking at anyone who knows.
The really interesting thing is that a lot of the people that are peddling some of the worst hate speeches, they're the ones that are claiming to be Christian. And it's just totally
Ding, ding,
against
ding.
everything
Right.
that being a Christian should stand for. Like
Right.
the people that are really Christian, it doesn't matter whether you're atheist or not. Like the people that are really Christian, you can tell
Yes.
that they're really Christian by the way they carry themselves and by the way they treat people and by the way they talk to people.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Yes.
there's a very stark difference between people that claim to be Christian and people that actually are Christian, which is really,
Yes.
interesting. But
You're right. You're right. I work for an organization that was founded by a nun. And so for the first time in my whole life, I'm working for not Jewish people,
mhm.
which I have forever.
I'm working for Jewish people.
Take me to your place. I love it. I've worked for Jewish people my whole life. My last boss was Israeli for 5 years, and like I don't know. I wasn't trying to work for only Jewish people. It just happened. And so, but this is my first time work, and because it's founded by a nun, it's not a religious organization,
Mhm.
but a lot of people there are very spiritual and very faithful. And there's only like 1% Jewish people there. So like
Mhm.
everyone's Christian and Catholic.
Mhm.
I've never in my whole life been around Christian and Catholic people to this degree, but also those who are so spiritual and so loving
Mhm.
and open and doing exactly what you just
Yeah.
described. I've only ever seen the bad,
Right.
and I don't mean to say bad or good.
No, I know
but
exactly what you're saying.
how people can use the Christianity for hatred as
Right.
opposed
Yep.
to for what it
Right.
is, love, which is all all the Bibles, all the spiritual texts they're all about love, and people can always use them for this evil hatred in
Right.
any religion, I feel like.
Yeah.
Maybe not
basically.
Buddhism, I think, but all the other major ones. But yeah, it's so interesting. And I think that you can really do such amazing work. But I never have seen those good Christian people, and I finally have. And you're right. There's a different.
There's a vast
They're
difference
like-
between the people.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like quiet and soft spoken.
Yeah.
They're like happy to help you carry shit.
Yeah, it's very, very helpful, kind people. Like we have this family friend, Gretchen, and she just like, you know, those people that are just consistently just smiling and just like being around them, like you feel like your spirit's better just because they're
Yes.
so light with like the way they carry themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's like that, and I feel like that's what it should be, as opposed to what it's sometimes made
Yeah.
out to be. And I feel like sometimes people use their insecurities to try to put down others, because if they can put themselves on a level above other people,
Mhm.
that's it. You know, it kind of, I guess, raises up their statue, like in their mind or something. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
That's
No, I get what you're saying.
That's basically where the ideas of because the ideas of like race in itself aren't even that old. You know, we're talking about like, what is this, like late 1500s, early 1600s in Northwestern Europe that these ideas kind of like originated from. And then the ideas of like eugenics and like there being like specific traits that were
Yeah.
seen as being the best traits. This is like a fairly new concept that people, we're kind of like, that's like our society's like ingrained in it now, but it's like in
Yeah.
the history of the world, it's like a fairly new concept in itself, which is really interesting when you really look at how people before them were mostly, recognized by the areas that they came from, as opposed to,
Yep. Yep.
It's very interesting.
It's so, you said that happened in the 1500s and like in Europe. And I'm thinking like, I guess I never really knew or thought about the history of like when like race began in writing or like anything like that. And I do know I'm thinking about at that time, and I'm talking out of my ass here about history. But no, but during that time in the 1500s, that is when Jewish people started to begin, when Jewish people were displaced for the first time. It's when we were in Spain and there was like a whole money thing and the Spanish government borrowed money from the Jewish people. This is where the rumors of Jewish people and money fucking began, everyone, was 500 years ago. And so the government in Spain borrowed money and they couldn't pay it back. And so instead of just like owning up to it or figuring out a way to pay it back to the Jewish people in the country who had loaned them the money, they just kicked out the Jewish people and started all these rumors about them that they were like money hungry and they were trying to steal from the Spanish government. And then that's how the Jewish people became a displaced people. And ever since then, like never had. Yeah.
It's so funny how little things like that, like, a lot of people don't know that at a certain point, you had the poor Irish and the poor Italians and Black people that were banding together to fight against the oppressors. But what happened was, which is diabolical, but also kind of genius for what they did, like in a diabolical way. I mean, they basically said, oh, well, because you look more like us, you're on our team, even though you don't have real power, you're still poor and you're still in bad situation. They didn't obviously say this to people, but they were like, you're basically on our team, so we'll give you a sense of power if you help us against them because they're not like us. Which is, and that it's so interesting just thinking about that, because that quelled some of the uprisings that were fighting back against the oppression. Because everyone's like, we're all poor, we're more alike than they are, than we're like them because we're all poor. But then they came in and basically said like, yeah, hey, you guys look kind of like us, so maybe you can be on our team, so you can help us fight against them. It's a really interesting concept. And it's just funny seeing how all of these things, like these cause and effect things, have affected the way like American society runs, and the way cause and effect has made societies around the world run. Like I had to explain, because people like to bring up these numbers about like crime and stuff in the Black communities and all kinds of other nonsense. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to give you a couple examples just to establish how cause and effect works, right? So I gave him an example, and I was asking him, I was like, are you familiar with what happened with the Haitians and the French? And they were like, no. I was like, okay, so just to give you a basic summary, what happened. The French came, colonized. Eventually, the Haitians were like, hey, we outnumber the French 4-1. We're going to kick them the fuck out of here. They kicked the French out. French came back like a year later with the Navy and said, if you don't pay us for loss of our resources, which they meant the slaves, we're going to come and fuck all your shit up. So because the Haitians couldn't afford a war with the French Navy over I think it stopped happening in 1947 or something like that, somewhere around that time. For over 100 years, the Haitian government paid the French $22 billion, which leads to Haiti being, when Trump says things like shithole countries, talking about places like Haiti and El Salvador, it's not a shithole country for no reason. It's a shithole country because they were basically raped of their resources for hundreds of years by the French. And when the Haitians basically were like, hey, we want you to pay us back for what you took from us because this was wrong. France was basically like, fuck off.
Yeah.
And, so I was like, that's how cause and effect works. And so then I started talking about, okay, so I'm going to give you a baseline because people like to say that slavery happened so long ago. And so the effects from that don't affect what's going on now. 4 generations back. Right? My grandfather was born on a plantation.
Oh. So
that basically lets you know how close we are to being that. And so you had slavery up until Juneteenth, was that 1865, and from that point up until right after that we had Jim Crow. So we went from slavery to Jim Crow, and then in the early 1900s, that's when you had all those big race riots where every black community that was built up was burned to the ground. Then you had the civil rights movement. But even after the civil rights movement happened and the right to vote happened, you had things like the war on drugs,
right,
that Nixon put into place, and Nixon officials have on record came out since then and said, this was to target minorities. Like there's a couple people that literally on video record have come out to say we were targeting minorities, and then you had right after that you had Reagan and Reaganomics, and there's footage of Reagan on record talking to Nixon's people actually. And saying about how some of the African emissaries or whatever were uncomfortable wearing shoes and coming out of their huts because they were monkeys. And so you go from slavery to Jim Crow to all of these like race riots, tearing down like pretty much every successful like self-sustained black community. Then you had all this stuff with the war on drugs. Then you had redlining.
Yeah.
Systemic racism.
And right. And then so all of these things happened right after, then like the stuff with Reaganomics, and then even up until recent memory where you had like the stop and frisk things. It's like,
right.
Yep.
This has been a continued system of oppression. This isn't something that just happened then, and then there's no cause and effect that happened afterwards. And while all this was happening, while black people weren't being allowed to get loans from the bank and build their houses in certain areas, you had generation upon generation upon generation of white people that were building their legacies to pass down to their children. So it's like when you're starting, like if you're doing a race and people are just starting from a 50-foot head start on everything. And like people don't understand that concept. It's not just that, oh, this happened hundreds of years ago and it's not affecting now. Like, no, there's a cause and effect. All of these things led up to what the situation is now.
Yeah.
And I worked for the city for 4 years, making sure that women and minorities and disabled weren't discriminated against before I went full time as an artist. In the 4 years that I worked for the city, we took 33 cases to court for discrimination from businesses that were claiming to hire minorities. And then you'd go and do site visits and there would be no one on staff, even though their government contract said that you had to at least attempt to interview people that were equally qualified for the positions.
Yeah.
And it's just like, people don't understand that and that's just in Philadelphia. You imagine that was in Philadelphia over a 4-year period. Imagine this happening in every major city, in most cities, period, like around the entire country.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it looks like we're starting to reach some kind of paradigm shift at this point where things are starting to get back to, people are starting to say this is wrong.
Yeah.
And that's at least hopeful.
Yeah. I think
bit.
I've definitely seen more people being more vocal and more people like banding together and like calling people out. Like, for instance, I mean, I had to call out someone in my family last night. And I mean, it's anyone who's like friends with me online probably can see all these things. And I don't like try to hide it. But it's to the point where I've like made a vow to myself to always like, sometimes there's things that sneak right past you because people do these, you know, they say these racist things, they do these racist gestures and don't even think they're being racist, which is part of the problem. They're like, what do you mean? Like, that's
It's
not
part
racist.
of the problem. Mhm.
Yeah. So they don't even see the problem in itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do think that I've seen more people kind of speaking up, which has been really cool.
Mhm.
But I've definitely made like a personal vow with myself to be like really aggressive because I am a very outspoken person as it is. And I do have like a, you know, a social media following. And I have a lot of people that look at what I do and look at what I say. And I feel like it's inappropriate and like just stupid of me to not use that platform to speak about these things. And I think that's the same for anyone that has a social media platform. If you have people following you, you know, you don't realize how much of an impact you probably have on people and how much your words really stay with them. So I feel like, you know, anyone that has any kind of platform should definitely always use it for good and to speak up, you know.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, I think a lot of us, including myself, could probably have done a lot more over the years. And now I've, you know, just really started pointing it out to people. And I think a lot of people have been doing that.
Yeah. And it's important to point it out to family members and friends and like, and have those conversations that are hard and tough because, you know, them saying it on the internet and getting to a fight with someone on the internet, it's not going to be the same as their daughter or their sister or, you know, niece saying, hey, you know, let's talk about that thing you said. Like, let's talk about why, you know? And I think that you can talk to those people and hopefully you can talk to them and have them be educated a little bit, you know? I think if you try to educate people or try to allow them to be on your side, or if you say to people, hey, I don't like that thing that you said, I'm not going to be around while you say stuff like that. And if you're going to keep talking like that, I'm not going to come to family parties anymore. You know, I think that there's sort of like there's definitely like a way that we can approach these things where, I don't know. It's hard. I struggle with it, you know?
Yeah.
My mom fights with her siblings and...
Yeah, I think that the easiest way that I explained it to someone the other day was I just made a point about the amount of minorities that are born into poverty because there's a saying from there's a line by one of my favorite rappers, Cannabis. He says, "Rock bottom transforms human beings to beasts," and it's so true.
Yeah.
When you just like it's like when you see those experiments with the mice where they starve them and they put a little block of cheese and they overcrowd the area. And then they're like, okay, let the mice loose. They start killing each other because they're fighting over scraps. And so you have this situation where because of the stuff that I mentioned earlier, 50% of Black people are born into poverty. Can you imagine that? I think the rate that they said at which white people are born into poverty, I think it was around 9 or 10%. So people like to quote statistics about the poverty and crime in the Black community, but don't take into consideration that because of all the things that I listed earlier, because of cause and effect, 50% of Black people are born into poverty. So that means that you have a bunch of people that have low resources, poor, bad education options.
Yeah.
And they're just in these situations where they feel like they have no hope. Like there's this one kid that I grew up with, and you know, I talked to him one day and I asked him just how he was doing, and he was struggling. He was like, you know, I got into some trouble when I was 15. I got arrested for like some really petty stuff. But like once you're in the system, and the system is just completely broken. Once you're in the system, you have a hard time doing anything. He was like, I have 3 kids to feed, so like my only option, I'm selling weed. Yeah. And he's like, that's my only option. And he's like, sometimes I have to sell other stuff, but I can't get a real job because I got a record when I was 15, and I'm out here struggling and I have kids to feed. And like people don't understand that, like when you're born into situations like that, where a lot of times you don't have options and you make bad decisions because you have limited options and limited resources. It's not the same as like people that are born in situations where they don't have to fight for survival every day. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's just a different mindset. You have to. So I feel like there's certain situations like over in Sweden. I think is probably the best scenario that I can think of. Like they have actual rehabilitation for people, and they make it so that when you get out of jail, you can be a productive member of society. There's actual rehabilitation. There's space for like growth, and they actually put them out there in a way that they can succeed. Like I think the rate that people go back to jail there, it's like it's like really low. It's like maybe 12% repeat offenders, because like once they get them out of the system, they put them in positions where they can say, oh, wow, like I messed up, but I really like I rehabilitated and I want to get back out there and be a productive member of society. And we don't have that here. So
Yeah.
you have this vicious cycle where people are just going in and out of the jail system. And it's like this endless cycle of violence and poverty and like fighting over scraps, and a lot has to be done with the jail system, with the education system, in order to actually put people in a position to succeed, as opposed to just having them in this vicious cycle. Because right now, the jail system is basically getting cheap labor. It's like modern slavery. It's really bad. Like the poor communities, the poor minority communities are targeted. They get them in the system, and they keep them in the system, so they keep on getting cheap labor out of this. And it's literally modern slavery. And it's like, I don't know if you've seen the documentary 13.
Yep.
But it's sad. It's sad. But hopefully we have all these people that are starting to wake up, like light bulbs are coming on, like, oh, wow, this is wrong. Like, we need to do something about this. So hopefully the paradigm shift comes sooner than 206 years,
That's a long time away.
It's a
I
long time.
hope it comes during our lifetime. I mean, I'm going to be a hopeful, positive.
We've seen a lot.
We've
gone through a lot.
We really
We
have.
have.
We're too young to have gone through as much
This
as
much,
we've
right.
gone through.
yeah, we have. But things
But
are
we
good.
did have Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that was good. Those were some. Listen, I know people kvetched. We were unhappy. Bombs were dropped. Cannabis dispensaries were being raided. Whatever. But listen, things weren't that bad. Okay.
Yeah, they were definitely better. Like I had some.
It's fucking peaceful, man. You know, that was good times.
Yeah, no, I love Obama. He's actually
Same.
Yeah, of course.
You know what's funny? His account is actually following me on Twitter.
Wow.
What? Britney
That
Spears
is-
is following me.
Whoa!
I swear to God.
Wow,
I swear to God.
Not a celebrity. You guys are celebrities. I'm a celebrity. I am only famous in Philly. And you guys are like, I'm like red. I don't even know.
No, I'm going to show you because I'm so proud of it when we're done here.
Wow. I want
but
you
that's
both
cooler.
to show me.
That's cooler.
I'm like overwhelmed with that.
I would want Michelle. Oh my God. I'm a
I
really
did a
big
painting of
Michelle
her,
fan.
actually.
Oh my God.
So I have to try to get a print or something to her, at least because somebody like did a commission for it.
That's awesome.
But like when he was like, I had a couple problems with certain things. Like there were certain like the response to what was going on in Gaza Strip. And there were certain
Yes.
but like most of the problems that I had with what Obama was doing was foreign policy issues.
Yeah.
And most American presidents struggle with foreign policy.
Nobody's perfect, Aloysius.
Hey, nobody's perfect.
Come on.
No, trust me. Like I love Obama. I have
Don't
Obama.
you hate Obama? No,
I
I'm just
love
kidding.
Obama. I have Obama T-shirts. I have like Obama stuff hanging up. But
Yeah.
like the difference is like, even though, and I only said that to make a point that even as much as I loved Obama, there were certain things that I saw and I recognized, and I'm like, I wish this was different. I don't think this was right. So I was able to speak out about that, even though I loved him. But the difference is with the current president, it literally does not. They're like it's more like a cult. Like it doesn't matter what he does that's wrong or crazy or inflammatory or.
They're like, he didn't say that. He didn't mean it. He meant this. He said this, but he
what the
meant
main
this.
difference is, and it's just
Yeah.
it's scary. Like you're starting to see these hints of like authoritarianism and like in fascism,
Yes.
and it's just like it's scary.
Yes.
It's
It's
scary.
scary.
Yeah,
It's a
it
scary
reminds me
world.
of someone else,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I do.
I know. That which will not be named.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
For real. The name that shall not be said. And it's true because nobody says his name anymore. So
Yeah.
it is like the name that shall not be said. We have to wrap this up in a minute, but this has been so wonderful and deep and soul fulfilling and just
Educational.
amazing.
Yes.
And I just want to ask you before we wrap up, Alloyious, where can we find you? Where could people find you on social media to follow you and see your next projects and stuff?
I am on all of the social media platforms.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I think Instagram is the most famous one, or
Cool.
the one that gets the most visibility.
And you
I
also
mean,
like
that's
make
what-
apparel.
I make
Oh,
apparel.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a
Mhm.
T-shirt. It's
I have
cool.
to find that. I was looking for you. Culture's Clothing. Is
Culture's
that correct?
Clothing, yeah.
Okay.
And it's so funny. I was going to do a big relaunch for the clothing line, but then like COVID happened, and like the manufacturers are like lowering wicks. Right now I'm doing print on demand, as
Cool.
opposed to like just buying a bunch of stock and storing it, because
Yeah.
it just doesn't make any sense at this point. Doing that type of thing when you can do print to order and get the order in and then just ship it out and then like cut the printer or like a cut of the thing. Just more
Definitely.
cost efficient. But I'll be launching new stuff with that soon. But it's at Culture's Clothing on Instagram, and it's Facebook.com/Alloyious McIlwaine art on Facebook, and Twitter is at Culture's Clothes, because before a certain point they had like a letter
Am I
limit.
following you on Twitter?
Is your main Instagram Cultures Clothes, or do you
Yeah.
have one? Okay.
No, I honestly, like I was thinking about making another one just for the art, but like people knew me from that because at one point I was posting more clothing than I was posting art.
Okay.
And then it kind of switched because I started becoming famous for the art stuff. Because I
Yeah.
was just doing murals and stuff all over the place. And then that's what really picked up. But people would refer to me as Cultures Clothing just because I hadn't changed it at that point. Like people would call me Cultures, like when they saw me in the street.
Gotcha.
So I was like, there's no point in changing it at this point because I'm still doing both things. And,
That's cool.
just everything's running through that.
That's great.
But I have
Cultures
my
Clothing.
Alloyious McIlwaine art hashtag. That's just my art if you're looking on Instagram for that stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, I have YouTube. I have literally everything.
Awesome.
Just building up the YouTube channel right now.
Nice.
Same. I don't know how to. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll try this. I don't know.
It's hard build.
It's hard.
It's the hardest platform to build your following on. I'd say.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's right. I feel like Instagram might be, but yeah. Anyway, that's great. This has been amazing, and I'm so grateful that you took time out of your schedule
Yeah, absolutely.
to come talk with us.
Yes,
and
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'll have to come back next time. You'll hear me rant about Columbus and Churchill and a bunch of other stuff. So
We'll do it. We did. I feel like this was a beautiful historical lesson. We went from the 1500s to today. We took y'all through some deep shit today.
Yeah.
This was
We
good.
took y'all to church.
That's true. Both Sams went to church today.
Yeah.
That's true. This was my first time in church. It was good. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so much fun. I thank you so much, Alloyious.
Absolutely.
How do you say your last name again?
McIlwaine.
McIlwaine.
Yeah.
Oh, I know I fucked it up. I knew I was gonna fuck it up
No,
at some
you got
point. This is
You
Sam.
disappoint me.
I'm sorry. I'm bad with names. This is Sam Cap and Sam Dub with Sam We Are.
Sam.